Hey everyone, and welcome to today's explainer. Listen, if you're a homeowner with a beautiful stone patio, maybe a winding walkway, or an incredible pool deck, you already know exactly how stressful the mere idea of cleaning it can be, right? You've dropped a massive amount of money into this outdoor living space, and literally the absolute last thing you want to do is blast it to pieces with a pressure washer. So today, we're going to break down exactly why amateur washing goes so horribly wrong and how to properly clean and protect your stone straight from the playbook of professional exterior cleaners.
Okay, let's dive into this roadmap and cure that anxiety. First up, we'll look at the paver cleaning dilemma. Second, we're going to expose those common amateur washing mistakes. Third, we'll outline the multi-step professional cleaning solution. And finally, we'll cover the crucial steps of rinsing and reapplying sand.
So starting with Section 1, the paver cleaning dilemma.
We really need to start by addressing the elephant in the room here. You know your stone is filthy, but you're utterly paralyzed by the fear of ruining it. So why exactly does power washing make homeowners so incredibly nervous? Well, looking at the source material, it makes total sense. Pavers and stone walls represent a huge investment for most of us. Whether we're talking about a rear deck, that intricate stonework around a pool, or the front walkways that give your house all its curb appeal, these are high-visibility areas. If you cause damage or unsettle those pavers, there's no hiding it. The stakes are super high and mistakes are, frankly, very obvious.
And you know, this fear runs incredibly deep. In fact, our sources highlighted one specific case where a homeowner's patio was not washed for 18 years. Literally 18 years since the day it was installed. That's almost 2 decades of built-up dirt, mold, and algae. Why? Simply because the homeowner was too afraid of causing damage or unsettling the pavers to either try it themselves or hire a pro. It just goes to show how powerful that hesitation really is.
Let's move on to Section 2, Common Amateur Washing Mistakes. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at what actually causes this dreaded damage, focusing squarely on those DIY methods and rushed jobs. Get a load of this direct quote from the source material regarding pressure washing a patio. This is the single dirtiest job that you're ever going to do at your house. Seriously, when an amateur takes a standard power washing wand to a patio, the sheer volume of dirt that gets blown up into the air is just unbelievable. Absolutely everything gets covered in mud and grime. And because that chaos of flying dirt is so overwhelming, well, it makes the person operating the wand panic.
And that panic, it triggers what we can call the amateur chain of disaster. Let's walk through this step by step. First, like we just said, there's a huge mess blowing up everywhere from that standard high-pressure wand. Second, because of that miserable mess, the operator just rushes through the job to get it over with as fast as possible. Third, all that rushing directly leaves behind these awful, uneven streaks all over the stone. Fourth, because amateurs usually point the wand directly straight down into the cracks to force the dirt out, they end up blowing out all the vital joint sand. And finally, without that sand, the pavers start to unsettle and shift. So, the exact damage they were terrified of? Yeah, they just caused it.
This brilliantly illustrates the mechanical difference between doing it wrong and doing it right. On one side, you have your typical amateur wand. It points directly downward into the cracks, using highly concentrated pressure that literally destroys your joint sand. But on the flip side, you have the Pro Surface Cleaner. This is a large circular piece of equipment that features 4 jets underneath. But here is the real secret. Those jets are set at an angle. They don't blow directly down into the cracks. Instead, they sweep the dirt away without excavating your joint sand. It cleans evenly and comprehensively, and most importantly, it does it without turning your patio's foundation into flying shrapnel.
Which brings us to Section 3, the multi-step cleaning solution. Okay, so we know what ruins a patio. Now let's look at the incredibly helpful methodology the pros use to get that gorgeous clean without the collateral damage. The biggest takeaway here is that proper cleaning is not just about brute water pressure. It relies heavily on chemistry. Enter concrete soap. The professionals first apply a low-dilution chlorine-based concrete soap. This chemical aid basically just sits on the stone and actively breaks up the mold, the mildew, the algae, and all that airborne dirt that's fallen from the trees. It does the heavy lifting safely. That means you don't need a destructive laser beam of water to blast the stains away. Let's move to the next part and see how this builds into a clear, professional 4-step process. Step 1, you apply that concrete soap and just let it sit to break down those organics. Step 2, you make multiple passes in different directions using that angled surface cleaner we talked about earlier. Step 3, and this is super important, you assess the surface and apply secondary touch-up soaps to any stubborn spots. And finally, Step 4, you perform a heavy rinse. Notice how the professionals really finesse the job. That large surface cleaner is actually using medium pressure, around 2,000 psi, but with a really high flow of gallons per minute, it's washing the stone, not cutting into it. Then, for those really stubborn, darker, embedded mold stains, let's say on the top of a stone wall, they don't crank up the pressure, no way. Instead, they walk around with a simple pump-up sprayer containing a slightly higher dilution of soap to treat the spot chemically. It's the classic working smarter, not harder approach.
Let's jump into section 4, rinsing and reapplying sand. We're now moving to the final and, quite frankly, the most overlooked phases of the entire project. This metric might actually shock you. A staggering 25 to 33%, literally up to a full third of the time spent on the job, is strictly dedicated just to rinsing. Think about that. Once the soaps and surface cleaners have lifted the dirt, you have to ensure that all of that broken up grime is completely flushed away from the patio. If you rush the rinse, all that dirt just settles right back down onto your expensive stone.
So the crucial point is the timeline immediately following the wash. At hour 0, the heavy rinse is completed. Then, you absolutely must let the patio sit for a day or two. It has to dry completely. You cannot rush this part. Finally, around day 3, it's time for the homeowner to reapply the joint sand that goes back down between the cracks. Resanding is an absolute necessity to lock the pavers back into place and ensure your foundation remains solid and stable for years to come.
To summarize our core thesis for this explainer, protecting your outdoor investment means totally abandoning that direct pressure amateur wand approach. True success relies entirely on operator knowledge, utilizing the correct chemical soaps, and using tools with the proper angles. It is never, ever about brute force.
Which leaves us with one final thought to reflect on today. Knowing what you know now about the chemistry, the magic of those angled jets, and the vital resanding process, is your patio ready for a proper multi-step cleaning, or are you going to risk your investment on just another rushed wash? The choice is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.